Hey Guardians, I just want to let everyone know that I do have both a Twitch and a Twitter, and I'm very active on both. Feel free to come give me a follow on both, links in the description. Alright Guardians, today we're talking about Vantage Point, an ARC adaptive frame pulse from the Revenant seasonal activities. We'll talk PvP and a little about PvE, and whether or not this thing is worth the absolute slog that is grinding onslaught guns, because we lost seasonal crafting because a bunch of gambling addicts who'd lose every penny in their bank account after 2 hours in Vegas just could not keep their mouths shut. This does mean that reviews on these seasonal weapons will come slower than in previous seasons. I can only take so much onslaught farming as the activity is time-consuming, gets repetitive after an hour or two, and there's no attunement or even focusing of these weapons. But moving on, starting with PvP, this is going to be a short review because this thing f***ing sucks. Genuinely, it's awful, and not because of its archetype. There are some very good adaptive frame pulse rifles out there, Syncopation, Bygones, and Jorum's Claw, for example. But Vantage Point is not one of them, not even close. So, getting into its base stats, you can see them on your screen now. 39 range with an effective reach of 32.5 meters, 49 stability, 40 handling, 57 aim assist, and 14 AE. So, getting into barrels, this is not a weapon I would ever recommend trying to play particularly aggressive with. So with that in mind, and remembering that stability and recoil direction are important on pulse rifles, for your barrel I would look at chambered compensator, then for your mag, go with accurized rounds because this thing is range starved, then for your masterwork, of course, go with range. That roll will give you 62 range, taking you to 35.1 meters. Now, getting right into that third column, for PvP you have Closing Time, a new perk that gives you range, accuracy, and handling as the mag gets lower. Then you have Keep Away, plus 10 range, plus 20 reload speed, and a boost to weapon accuracy as long as no enemies are nearby. Then you have To the Pain, which boosts your handling and aim assist when you take damage until the weapon is stowed or you die. Then Lone Wolf, another of the newer perks that gives you a boost to your aim assist, ADS speed, and airborne effectiveness, and this is improved if no allies are near you. Then in that fourth column, High Impact Reserves, Desperado, Swashbuckler, and Headseeker. Now for dueling roles, I would go with Keep Away in that third column, mainly for the plus 10 range, or in the event Keep Away gets nerfed, Lone Wolf or To the Pain. I do have a roll with Closing Time. I tried it. I wasn't impressed with it on this weapon. Then in the fourth column, Headseeker for obvious reasons, or maybe High Impact Reserves. And here's the first issue with this weapon. It's terrible for dueling. At tier 5 to 6 resilience, this thing kills in 5 crits and 2 body shots. Above tier 5, it takes 6 crits and 1 body shot, giving you a TTK of 0.93 seconds. Below tier 4, and you can 2 burst, but you're not going to see people at that low of a resilience all that often anymore, even with hunters. This means to get a better TTK, you need something like Radiant, which will let you 2 burst at any resilience for a 0.6 second TTK, or you could just use Elsie's, or No Time, or Red Death and get a 0.67 TTK at base. Against other types of weapons, you might be okay, though this thing will still struggle, but the instant you have to fight Elsie's or Igneous, you're gonna get bullied. Now, for kill chaining, I would probably still stick with any of the previous mentioned options in the third column, but I would go with Swashbuckler in the fourth. You do, of course, have Desperado, but it really just isn't what it used to be. And Swash is particularly strong on Prismatic Titans, but if you pair it with something like a Warlock with Celestial Fire, or maybe a Hunter with Atheris, it'll still work fine. You get a melee kill, proc all 5 stacks of Swash, and your TTK drops to 0.53 seconds with 5 crits at tier 7 and above, and 4 crits 1 body at tier 6 and below. A very fast TTK, but this does require you to build into it. You'll need a strong melee build of some sort, and like I said, the only other real option in that last column is Desperado, and yes, it's a fun perk, but it just doesn't feel very good anymore. Desperado will get you a slightly faster TTK at 0.5 seconds even, but there's no extra forgiveness as far as shot placement goes, and unlike other damage perks, your final blow has to be a crit, meaning it will not proc as consistently as something like, say, Kill Clip. Now, as far as weapon feel goes, the overall shooting experience seems okay at first until you actually take it into combat. Most adaptive frame pulse rifles actually feel very nice to shoot, it's just their slow TTK and lack of range that generally make them underperform when compared to high impacts. But this one feels noticeably worse when compared to others. Again, Jorum's Claw as an example. Vantage Point's weapon model is nice enough, it looks good, the sights are a little blocky for my taste, but they're functional enough. One thing worth noting, and I was told this is due to something intrinsic on the weapon, you cannot use the ballistics mod on this gun, which is a major throw from Bungie because it needs that extra range and stability, like really needs it, and ballistics would be very helpful on this weapon. So overall, I am not impressed with it in PvP at all. And I mean, you'll see some footage of this too. I was struggling to use Vantage Point. I ended up putting on Jorum's Claw for a few matches, and the difference was night and day. So what about PvE? Well, it's fine. There's a few things to work with here, though I genuinely cannot remember the last time I saw an adaptive frame pulse in PvE. But if you really want to use it, then you have Stats for All and Eddy Current in the third column, neither of which I'm particularly a big fan of. Then in the fourth column, you have a bit more to work with here. Jolting Feedback, where sustained damage from this weapon applies Jolt. Good if you're on an arc build of some sort and just generally a strong perk overall. Then you have One for All, Desperado, Swash, and Focused Fury. Now, as far as combos go, in that third column, I probably just stick with Stats for All, where landing hits on 3 separate targets will boost your handling, stability, reload speed, and range for a short duration. Then, if you're on a good arc build, I'd combine it with Jolting Feedback. Otherwise, I'd probably go with One for All or Swash just for general play, since Swash is easy to proc over and over in PvE, and One for All will give you a 35% damage buff for hitting 3 separate targets, easy enough inside of PvE. So overall for PvE, it's okay. It's not great, it's not terrible, it's just functional, I guess. And this is one of the big issues with the lack of crafting. Unlike normal Onslaught, there is no attunement for these weapons, and thus far at least there's no place to focus them either, and the weapon elixirs do not give a consistent drop of the weapon. This means if you want this thing, you're going to be playing a lot of Salvation Onslaught or Prison of Elders, and I mean a lot. And with all this factored together, Bungie really could not afford to have any of these weapons be short of S tier. Not B tier, not A tier, S tier. Nothing less than that is acceptable. So, is this thing worth farming for dozens, potentially hundreds of hours for? Absolutely not. Even if you like the archetype, I would ignore this thing completely. It severely underperforms in PvP, and it's only okay in PvE. This is not worth farming an insanely time-consuming activity on any level. If you want a good jolting feedback weapon for PvE, just go farm the auto rifle from Vesper's Host. It is a far, far superior weapon. But that's all for me today, Guardians. You can let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed this review or found it helpful, do me a favor and hit that like button and hit that subscribe button with the bell icon. And don't forget to share this video with anyone you think might find it helpful, interesting, or entertaining. For now, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.